Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Vericu. Aquí estamos hoy con Team Charles de Ne Obliviscaris. Team Charles, welcome. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Yeah, very good and excited for the upcoming tour.
That's great to hear. So you will be touring Latin America, and you'll be playing Mexico City at the MxMF Metal Fest. So this is after your most recent album Exul was released last year in 2023, in 2023. And I have to
Mm.
let you know that actually in this channel I named Exul my album of the year last year. So great job there.
Well,
Um,
thank you so much.
no, thank you for releasing it. And this is your fourth full length album, right? And you can tell it's a continuation of the great work you've been doing over the many years. But how has the reception for the album been?
Well, it's been amazing. I guess with every album, we feel like we're growing and learning. Like, I really love the songs on all of them, but we keep improving as performers, as artists, and just learning more about how to create the sounds that we want when we're recording and mixing and mastering all these different elements. And Exul was really the first album where we all agreed that, hey, this is something special. This is the closest we've ever gotten to what's in our imaginations. And the great thing is that a lot of people have agreed with us. The response to it, it's been our most successful album. A lot of people, it's their new favorite album of ours, um, and a lot of new people have discovered us off this album that didn't know us before. And I think that's been really wonderful because, as we've been touring around the world, there's just been a lot more people at the shows than there was in the past. And obviously for any band, that's what you want.
Yeah, that's great. Great to hear. Uh, Hopefully, even more people start listening to you and getting to know you. Now, this being your fourth full length album, you've also recorded some EPs. But how was the process of making this album different than the other albums?
Yeah, it was completely different, I guess. Um, songwriting wasn't any different. I mean, it was torturous at times. We got halfway through writing this record and we realized that we were kind of writing two different records, and we had to kind of have sit down amongst us and work out what direction to go because some of the material didn't fit together like on the one record. And but I think because we really took the time to get that right, the specialness of the songs I think really comes through. And look, when it comes to recording, we were supposed to record it all in March, April 2020. The plan was that Dan was going to go to the USA to record drums, and then everyone was going to meet in Melbourne, Australia, to record the rest of the record here in Melbourne, Australia. But literally just after Dan got back from the USA, that's when the pandemic hit in March 2020. And we've got two members, Martino in Italy and Benji in France, who don't live in Australia. And it was really crazy because the Australian government actually announced they were closing their borders to Italy, specifically, seeing they were one of the first countries with COVID,
Wow.
on the morning that Tino was supposed to fly to Australia. And so it was like 5 in the morning, and he's about to leave for the airport. And I've like left in this urgent message, like, please, like, call me before you go to the airport. We have to have a quick chat. I don't know if you can get into the country. And I'm like calling government hotlines, trying to work out if he was going to be allowed in because they were actually going to close the borders while he would be about halfway through his flight.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, well, if he's already in the air, does that mean that they turn everyone back? Or because he was already in the air on the way here, will they let him in when he arrives? And we couldn't get an answer. So in the end, decided to just stay put. And then the borders were closed to Australia for about 2 years. So, but, we didn't see, our bandmates for a couple of years, which was really bizarre. And instead of recording it all together in March, April 2020, we recorded it in about 9 different recording studios in about 4 different countries across 2.5 years. So it was like a painful process, but I guess the benefit in the elongated nature of the process was that we really took our time making sure that everything was exactly the way we wanted it. And after all of the delays, it was kind of like, okay, well, if it's already this late, we might as well make sure that it's exactly the way we want. And thankfully, that's how it came out.
And you can tell the results actually. They show there. So I mean that must have been really hard, like having members in different countries and then not being able to record the way you want it.
Mm.
But now it's out. You've toured North America, you toured Europe, Australia, almost everywhere with this album. How does it feel being able to play those songs live after all those torture years?
It felt amazing. And I remember we were in Finland last year. So it was the first beginning of our first tour for the album cycle, and it was our first tour in 4 years almost. And so the first time we played live in almost 4 years, which that sort of break had never happened for us before. We'd never had more than 6, 12 months off in about 20 years. And after the first show is always a bit hectic, on any tour. The first show in 4 years, you're thinking a lot and trying to do everything. And the second show was in a Tampere, Finland, and it was a fantastic show, packed venue. But I was really sick, and I had just about lost my voice. Had really bad throat infection. Um, but the crowd was just unbelievable. And, I had like Tino sing some of the clean vocal parts and me just doing what I could. And the crowd was just unbelievable and acting like it was, a 10 out of 10 show, even though obviously I was not feeling that great. And after the show, I had tears in my eyes of joy just from feeling that energy because like I said, first show you're thinking a lot and get to that second show and even with me being so sick and not being ideal performance, just feeling the energy from the crowd, especially getting to play those new songs and just being reminded of how special it is to be on stage with this band just was really overwhelming. And so that's where it started on this album cycle, and it's just been really wonderful to just see the responses to those songs and just be reminded of how special it is to be in this band in the first place.
Oh man, that's great to hear. I mean, can't imagine being used to playing so often and then not playing for 4 years. Wow. So speaking of this, I mean, it's been 12 years since the release of your first album, and
Mm.
this year is the 10th anniversary of your album Citadel, right? And you re-released the remastered version for this anniversary. What
Yeah.
prompted you to remaster Citadel?
Yeah, well, I guess Citadel wasn't a record that like I think the songs on that record are absolutely amazing. And we worked with Jens Bogren mixing and mastering our first two albums, Portal Vi and Citadel. And when we got the very first mix of Citadel, I guess at that time kind of just trusted it because he's incredible at what he does. We just kind of let him do his thing. And when we got the first mix for Citadel, it actually wasn't um, style wise, it wasn't really what we wanted at all. And then we spent the whole mixing and mastering process moving it across to make it sound in a way that we thought suited the songs. And the end result was still very high quality, but the style was a little bit different than what we had in our imaginations. And what we kind of found was a lot of people on that record, when we started touring internationally, a lot of people would be surprised at how heavy the band was live. And we thought that was in part due to the style of the production. And it wasn't that it wasn't really good, but it was just a style thing. It felt like it was quite different to how we sound live. And so essentially, we had always had it in our head that we wished the production was a slightly different style. And then look, Mark Lewis, we worked with on the last two records, and he did such a great job on the production for Exul. And so, really, it was about could we bring a little bit of the Exul production and the knowledge that Mark Lewis has of the way we sound now, and just bring a little bit of that to the Citadel production without making it different. Uh, to a degree that is not honoring the original version. And so really that's where the impetus came about. It was like, hey, Mark, can we try to bring a little bit of Exul to Citadel? And just there's these subtle differences there that, we really think make it come alive just that little bit more. And the response has been really wonderful, which has been great.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Citadel was well received. It's the album that I first heard you with, but then sometimes you think like, okay, what? How can you change this? How can you make it better? But then you listen to it, and yeah, you can tell that it can still have something different to offer, and it's great to hear it.
Hmm.
So yeah, you mentioned the style, right? Your style and everything. You guys are mostly Ne Obliviscaris is mostly labeled as an extreme progressive metal band, but your sound is much more than just progressive metal, right? So you've given us hints throughout the years of some black, some death, melodic death, technical death influences, but also not forgetting the string elements, right? You play violin, so
Hmm.
and all the other string instruments. How do you explain this sound of Ne Obliviscaris to people who are barely hearing about you? Probably someone you meet that haven't heard you before.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, progressive extreme metal is probably the best way in one sentence. Uh, and then just point out that we have a violinist that always piques people's interest. But really, I think we're not a great band to try to describe in words. Um, every song that we create, I'm always thinking in regards to a journey that we're trying to take the listener on and trying to make people feel something significant in that song. Some other bands may take you on a journey, but across the album. But we try to do both, where within that individual song, which might be, 10 to 17 minutes long, it's like its own short story, then pieced together with these different chapters that make the record. And as to how that sound comes about, it's really just about us being ourselves and letting that shine through. Because, we're all quite unique individuals, we're quite unique individuals, and a lot of people have this unique element to them. And because we are quite different from each other, sometimes that means we don't agree. But when we are able to find that middle ground that works together, that's when I guess the magic happens, because you do have these really different ideas, and you can hear that because a song like Misery Chord 1, a majority of that, the bassist of that song, the guitar, stuff like that, written by Martino, our bassist, and Benji, our lead guitarist. Whereas Misery Chord Part 2 was mostly written by myself, and so you have this 17-minute track split across two elements with different primary songwriters depending on the section and the part of the song. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of important bits that I added in part one. And then also in part two, one of my favorite things in part two is Benji's guitar solo, so it's always this mix of everybody, but the original elements of the foundation of the song comes from different members. And, Matt contributes significantly as well. He wrote some great bits in Ecus on this record. And so I think the fact that we have a few different songwriters who contribute help contribute, makes our sound broader and unique. And then just having an attitude of that nothing's off limits. So if we like it, that's all that matters. Like, we don't care about the style or the genre. So we'll bring in any type of metal, we'll bring in jazz or flamenco or classical influences. Like, we don't care. If we love it, then that's all that matters.
Excellent. Okay, so it's been 5 years since the last time you played Mexico. And now you're coming back to Mexico City for the MxMF Metal Fest. What are you looking forward to the most about Mexico?
I mean the fans. The fans are amazing in Mexico. Definitely some of the best in the whole world. Maybe the best. I would say Mexico and Montreal in Canada. I would say probably maybe two of the best in the whole world, just in regards to the fanaticism and the energy. And it's been always so fun to be there in Mexico. And so yeah, just excited to be on stage and feel that energy from the fans more than anything else.
And you're also playing more Latin American countries like Chile, Brazil, Colombia, and Costa Rica. And am I right? Is this the first time you're gonna play those countries?
Yes, yeah. That whole week is a week of first time evers, except for Mexico. And so yeah, so that's really exciting. Get down to South America for the first time, and we were getting so much support from all our fans there, and that will be this great adventure that we can finally go play some new places and connect with those fans as well.
Great. Uh, you're probably gonna tour most of the world already after this tour, and it is a long way from Australia. So, how long does it take you for the flight and everything?
Oh, I mean, it's a long time to get anywhere from
Oh
Australia.
yeah,
Like I mean, one of the closest places to get to is if we're flying to LA, we can do that in like a 14-hour flight. But but then most of the time you're getting two or three flights, to go to Europe, it's normally about, 20 to 28 hours. Because it's 20 hours of actually flying to get to Europe. And I think this tour we're actually going to be going to Europe first, and then Mexico is the very last show of that run. We've got 31 shows, 24 of them in Europe, then the week in Latin America, and it'll probably take us 15 to 20 hours to get across from Europe, and then it'll be like another 20 plus hours to get from Mexico back to Australia afterwards. But just part and parcel of being an Australian band. It's just yeah, the way that it is.
and Australia has such a great scene in metal and in all music in general. So that's
It it does. Absolutely. We have I think kind of by far I think the best metalcore deathcore scene in the whole world. There's an insane amount of bands coming from that scene, Parkway Drive, That Is Murder, Polaris, Make Them Suffer, Alpha Wolf. I mean, there's so many bands doing big things around the world from that scene, and I left out a bunch as well. But then also just on the other side of the scene, we've got all these great progressive bands, Caligula's Horse, Carnival, um, and then a lot of other great bands as well. Bellacore, Psychroptic. I mean, I could keep going. Like
yeah.
we really do have a great scene here in Australia. Um, and it's just been growing over every 5, 10 years, it seems like the scene is bigger than it was before, which is amazing.
And that compensates for not being able to probably have that many bands from outside that often, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Great.
Thankfully, a lot more bands come to Australia than they used to,
Yeah.
but it is pretty cool having so many fantastic Australian bands because you can then go see a local Aussie show, but it's someone that's putting on a world-class event.
Great. All right. There's many more questions that I would like to ask you, but we're coming to the end of the interview. Before we let you go, do you have any message for all your fans in Mexico and Latin America?
Well, just a big thank you to everyone for all your support, whether you've just been discovering us in the last few days or for many years. It is really because of the fans that we're able to keep doing this, and um, just excited to catch up with you all in person in Mexico City and just rock out and have an incredible time together.
Well, thank you very much for the interview, Tim. Thank you, everyone. Gracias a todos por escucharnos. Recuerden que Ne Obliviscaris va a estar el 10 de noviembre en Santiago, Chile, 12 de noviembre en Sao Paulo, Brasil, 13 de noviembre en Bogotá, Colombia, 15 en San José, Costa Rica y el 16 en la Ciudad de México en el MFMX Metal Fest. Thank you and have a great one.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.